Hey there,
Hey
Elliot.
Max, how's it going?
Nice to virtually meet you.
Yeah, good to meet you too. And yeah, apologies it took so long to get on a video together.
No problem. You got some craziness going on over there, it sounds like.
Yeah, we're super busy at the moment, like trying to push for the decks. Uh, so live release, and also we've got obviously the launch pad to contend with as well. So we've got like 15, 20 projects in the pipeline. So
Jeez.
it's crazy busy. Yeah. Mhm.
So, how big is your team, if you don't mind me asking?
We've got about 15 full-time members now. So still pretty small. Still in like, well, I'd say like startup mode probably. But yeah, we've got a lot of like back-end developers who are just busy, heads down working on like Plutus development stuff.
Right.
And then we're trying to build out our marketing team at the moment. So it's just me and a few other like guys and girls like doing the marketing, so it's quite full on at the moment. So yeah, we're looking to expand pretty quickly, hopefully.
Yeah, yeah. So what is your position at Occam?
So I'm head of communications at Occam, and I used to work with the Cardano Foundation. As you can see, I'm fanboying here with the Cardano Summit top on.
Mhm.
So yeah.
Cool. And then I also was just curious. So, how do you guys juggle? You said you have like 15 different offerings. How do you juggle
Mhm.
all doing all those things and a DEX, and when it's such a competitive field with all of these different things?
Yeah, I mean it's fairly difficult. So I mean, we want to be like a full stack DeFi ecosystem for the whole of Cardano. So we've got these different silos at the moment. So we've got the Occam Razor deck, Occam Razor Launchpad, and then we've got the Occam X Dex. Then we've got the Accelerator, which is an incubator for Cardano. But they may look like separate products or like separate like work streams, but they actually all like they complement one another. So we're trying to make this ecosystem that's self-sustaining, so projects can come through our incubator. Then they can get to a point where they can go through our launchpad, so they can do a successful raise through Occam Razor. And then once they've gone through to that stage, they can then find secondary market liquidity on
Mm.
Occam X Dex. And that's going to be one of the first dexes for like Cardano native tokens. So we're really looking to make this whole, so I'm not sure if you're familiar or if you viewers are familiar with Project Catalyst. So that's like IOHK's official, like it's sort of like a crowdfunding platform, but decentralized essentially. And we want to be the next like logical conclusion after that. So projects can find some verification through like a decentralized voting mechanism and find some validation that their idea is good, get some initial funding, then they can come through the accelerator, find more funding, come through Occam Razor, get even greater funding through an IDO, and then they can list on OccamX. So it's really going to be this whole timeline for projects, and they'll be supported by each of these things as they go.
Okay. So what's the difference between the incubator and the launch pad? Is it like
Mhm.
just help with founders and building out their team, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's a good question. So not all of the projects that launch through Occam Razor are required to be accelerator projects. So say, for instance, a project already has like a core team, they already have a product. Probably a good example of this would be Open Rights Exchange, who we're going to IDO on our platform on the 12th of October. So they already have been like launched for 3 years, but they're only just now going to launch their token. So they don't need our help in building a product or building a team out because they've already got a great team in product. They just need that launchpad capabilities. Whereas Accelerator is more for projects that are maybe bootstrapping from just a couple of core team members. So they might have an idea, but they need help with like the business aspect of it. So maybe incorporating like a Swiss foundation or something in Estonia or something like that. And then launching like the actual token or attracting Plutus developers, which are super rare nowadays. But we have good links with the Mergo and IOHK through the C Fund. So we have access to all of these things that projects might need. So if they're super early stage and they need that like push, they need that help, they can come through Accelerator.
Okay. So when someone comes to you, do you guys receive payment in the form of like a supply of tokens or equity or something like that?
So when like a project launches through Occam, we have what we call continuous ecosystem diversification rewards. So we always like try and, if the project agrees to it, of course, buy a portion of their IDO tokens with OCC. We distribute those rewards to all of our users. Obviously, some of that goes back to the Occam Association DAO, which is we're soon going to introduce more functionality for that. So we're going to have like on-chain voting mechanisms. And that's for like the good of the whole Occam.fi, but the whole Cardano ecosystem. So we've also recently launched Cardano stake pool as well. So people can delegate their ADA to our stake pool, and the profits that we make from the pool go back into like the accelerator incubator, so they fund new projects building on Cardano, and we distribute our DEX token OCX to delegators in return. So we're trying to create this like self-sustaining ecosystem where we can invest into projects but then distribute it across our token holders, and we can also feed that back into like new projects building on Cardano.
Okay. So in the incubator, it sounds like it's similar to when a public company acquires another company and, you know, they pay in a form of stock. Is that kind of how you think of it?
I wouldn't say we acquire them, so they're like a separate
Gotcha.
product team, a separate project team, sorry. So they still have full autonomy over where they want to take their project. We don't, you know, have any major say in what they do and how they build. We're just there to give them, you know, the help they need as they're growing. So we may get like we may choose to invest in their project, in which case we would have a portion of tokens, but as an early backer, all of that would be vested as a normal, say, VC would. So it's basically like a VC relationship, but with a lot more help for these projects. So we actually do give them resources that they need to get off the ground. We're not just there like a silent backer, we are actually an active partner. So some of the projects that have already come through our incubator include Theos, which is like an NFT minting platform and marketplace. There's DeFi, which is a DEX aggregator for Cardano, and probably one of the most well-known is Card Wallet, which is one of the first like non-custodial wallets for Cardano, and they've just launched their iOS and Android app. So they've come on like leaps and bounds, but when they joined us, they really just had like this idea, and we helped them take it through to fruition.
Okay. So what's a few things that you guys look for when taking on companies in the incubator? Is there like a kind of a checklist that you go through?
Yeah, so I mean, probably the biggest thing is passion. So obviously, we want founders who are really passionate about bringing needed solutions to Cardano. We're not just looking to churn out like the same sort of projects that, you know, you can like clones of other projects. We really want like, you know, innovative solutions that are going to attract users and are going to help build out the Cardano ecosystem. So obviously that's good for our, like, it's good for our ecosystem as Occam.fi, but as we're officially backed by Cardano entities, we also have a strong focus on building out Cardano. So you have to be building for the good of the Cardano ecosystem. Doesn't really matter how big your team is. I mean, obviously, it's advantageous if you've already convinced devs to join your team, because usually that means it's a good idea. But if you've come through something like Catalyst, then, you know, you're probably already at a stage where you would be ready to go through the accelerator incubator. So, you know, a lot of teams and a lot of founders, like what we find is there's a lot of developers out there who have fantastic ideas. They're very, very capable of building these solutions out. But then when it comes to marketing them, when it comes to doing the token sale, when it comes to the tokenomics and, you know, maybe incorporating a legal entity and that sort of thing, those are things that a lot of developers, and rightly so, don't want to focus on. So that's what we can help those projects do.
Okay. So with the Launchpad, I know some other Launchpads have fairly high barrier to entry, like for investors. How does that look for new investors who are interested? Like, what do they need to do to join the Occam Launchpad?
Yeah, it's a good question. So at the moment, we have like a minimum threshold of 150 OCC. So you have to buy and stake 150 OCC in order to participate in the Occam Launchpad. And that's on like a stake weighted random basis, so it's like a random chance participation. The guaranteed we do have guaranteed tiers, but they require obviously a higher OCC stake. But we are always looking for ways to like democratize this process. So we've just made ways for liquidity miners to participate in IDOs, so they can be randomly selected for IDO participation if they provide liquidity to OCC pairs. And also we just announced a major partnership. We announced it at the Cardano Summit actually, with Swissborg. So they're a European cryptocurrency app. They have, I think, nearly 1 million users across Android and iOS. And they've acquired like a portion of our tokens, which they're going to use to distribute CD rewards. So this is our, as we spoke about earlier, the rewards that we distribute across our community. They're going to be available for Swissborg users. And also we're going to allow people to participate in Occam IDOs through Swissborg by holding a portion of OCC tokens in Swissborg. This is going to reduce like barriers to entry, because it's a centralized solution, but it's probably a lot easier to use for people who aren't familiar with Web3 browsers such as MetaMask. And also, you know, they can have direct fiat on ramps. So there's not going to be the same transaction fees. So we're always looking to make it a lot more equitable and fair for people to get into IDOs. And that's our ultimate goal as well.
Yeah, I think that's important, and it'll trend in that direction. It's just going to get more and more user friendly and more accessible, I think, with these kinds of things. So now I'm going to ask. I have just 4 questions here that I'm going to ask, and as you know, I'm putting this into like one comprehensive Cardano Dex video, and then this full video will just kind of go to like my members group. So I just have 4 questions. Try to limit the answer to around like a minute, because there's going to be a lot of answers in here. So
sure,
do what you can in about a minute. So the first question is, how do you guys stand apart from other Cardano dexes?
So I think probably one of our key features is, and I've alluded to it a little bit, that we're backed by Emergo and IOHK. So Emergo are obviously one of the founding entities of Cardano. They were there from the very beginning. They've made an investment into us when we were at very early stage. And likewise, IOHK through the C Fund. So the C Fund is the venture capital arm of IOHK, the engineers of Cardano, and they've made an investment into us as well. And this really gives us a great insight into what's going on in Cardano, how we can best build, attract the best developer talent. So all of our developers go through the Plutus Pioneer program, and we just have access to these resources that maybe some other dexes don't. It's worth mentioning that Sunday Swap are also a C Fund portfolio company, and you know what those guys are building is really interesting as well. I don't know if you've spoken to them already. I don't think that one dex is going to particularly win. You know, I don't think it's going to be like that. I think it's going to be like Ethereum, where we have many dexes. But I'd say that our official links with Cardano do give us a leg up, maybe over some of the other launch pads and dexes that don't have that, especially in the early days, you know, where it's going to be a race to bring the first dex to Cardano.
So you don't think that there's going to be like a Uniswap type scenario where there's one that's just much bigger than everything else?
There could be one that I think maybe is used way more than others, but I mean, even on Ethereum, you know, we've got Uniswap, there's 1inch, the Sushi Swap, like we've got all of these different dexes that, you know, Uniswap is obviously the leader, and it was the original. It had first mover advantage, and it's got some great marketing as well. But I think there's always going to be an opportunity for many different types of dexes, and probably attract different types of users as well. And also one of our other advantages is we have the Launchpad component too. So all of the projects that launch to our Launchpad, it's going to make sense for them to find secondary market liquidity and trading straight onto our DEX. And we're going to make that very easy for them, and also enable liquidity as a service. So our users can provide liquidity to these new projects that launch through our Occam platform. So it's going to make sense for the projects that come through our Launchpad to launch on OccamX first and foremost.
Yeah, the way that I kind of foresee it happening is there'll be a kind of a long tail. Well, there'll be one, you know, most significant winner, and then maybe the second place will be like 50-60% of the volume, and then from there kind of diminishing returns. And the way I look at it is we can probably guess who's going to be in the top 3 to 5 bunch, but as far as who's going to be number one, that's what I'm trying to figure out anyways.
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting. So the second question that I have is, have you guys solved the concurrency issue?
We have, and I think probably by the time you publish this video, we'll have a demo out on exactly what that looks like. So basically we use, batch of transactions to, process multiple swaps within the same transaction. So in the demo that we're going to release shortly, actually probably later today, we're going to have proof on chain that you can go to like the Cardano Explorer and see that within our testnet environment we've executed 2 swaps within the same transaction. So it is possible. At first, I think that our solution and other dexes looking at this solution are maybe going to have to introduce an off-chain, perhaps somewhat centralized element. I mean, the actual execution will be done on chain, but the batching of the transactions, that may have to utilize a centralized element. But I think that we're moving very, very close to launching like a full solution for that. And I would probably say that maybe us and a couple of other teams are at the closest of actually solving that. And I mean, that to me is like a really exciting time. I mean, I've been in Cardano since 2017, so since it launched. And to have DEX capabilities on Cardano and swap all these native tokens that are emerging every day is just going to be huge, because it's going to be such a low cost solution to transact value. So I'm really excited to see the launch of that.
Yeah, I'm very excited about it too. It's just going to benefit ADA as well. So with this demo, is it going to be like a video demo, or is it actually going to be like a test version of the DEX that people can play with?
This is a video version to start, yeah. So our developers have put it together. One of our technical writers has worked hard on it. But we are going to have a public test net, within the next couple of weeks, we hope, that users can go ahead and try out. But initially this is a video demo with proof, of the transactions to show that we've solved this concurrency problem and that we can process more than one transaction at a time.
Okay, cool. So the next question is, when do you plan to go live with the main net launch or the official DEX?
So we've learned from the best in terms of announcing like pinpoint development milestones. So obviously Cardano has been in development for some 3 years now, and everyone thought that core components would launch maybe sooner than they did. What we have said, in interviews like this in the past, is that we don't want to release an MVP that breaks and has loads of problems. We want to release an MLP, a minimal lovable product that people can use. It works, and it shows, basically the hard work and the effort that our developers have put in. We think it would be a real shame to release something that wasn't, obviously nothing is perfect on day one, but something that wasn't at least a really great product that people could use, and it had an actual tangible impact on Cardano. So we are still looking, to release the demo very soon. Hopefully it'll be out by the time this video airs. And also a test net soon. But in terms of a main net launch, that would be something that we'd look to do, when all the components were stable and we were sure that people would enjoy using it. I know that's not an exact date, but yeah, I think exact dates set up communities for some disappointment.
Sure. So are you guys trying to be the first main net launch, or is there more focus on, we don't exactly want to be first, we would just want the best product at launch?
Yeah, not necessarily. So we might not be the first, but we definitely do want to be one of the best. I'm not sure that, like Cardano is such a new ecosystem, and smart contracts, through Alonto, have only been rolled out since the 12th of September. So realistically, we're looking to be one of the most usable. So, I mean, if that means we're not the first, then so be it. But we want to bring something that people will actually be able to use and not have massive headaches while they're using it.
Sure. And then my last question here is, how do you intend to make these DEXs easier to use for the everyday person?
Sure, yeah. So we've gone for like the typical swap interface. So ours is going to look a lot like, your uni swaps. Obviously, we've got our own branding on that, some of which you can see behind me. But we're going to make it just a super simple swap interface. Like you connect your Web3, like your Web3 wallet. So maybe that could be Yoroi or Card Wallet, as we mentioned earlier. And you just swap one asset for the other. There's not going to be any bells or whistles. It's just going to be a really easy swap interface. In terms of making swaps easier for like the everyday user, I think that's something we'll probably have to tackle as an industry as a whole, and see how we approach like Web3. Like Web3 browsers. I mean, MetaMask is still quite a barrier to entry for a lot of users. This is why we want to work with the likes of Swissborg. We also have a partnership with Coty to enable people to access it with minimal friction. And if we can extend those functionalities to the DEX, we're already implementing them on the Occam Razor Launchpad. But if we can extend those capabilities to the DEX, then that would be great. But obviously we have to keep it decentralized. So introducing a centralized element for the sake of usability is problematic on the decentralization point. So I mean, it's not easy, but we're always looking for ways to improve and broaden our appeal to like more users as well.
Mm-hmm. Do you see a possibility of any DEXs in the future having direct fiat payments within the DEX itself?
That would be cool, but I think again it would require some level of centralization, like a payment processor, like like Coty provide direct fiat on ramps and Swissborg provide direct fiat on ramps. Obviously they don't settle that on chain, they have to work with payment providers. And then that takes away from like the core founding principles of a DEX. I think more likely there's going to be solutions like Coty have just launched their DJED stablecoin. And that could be a really nice on ramp. You could go through Coty and buy DJED, be pegged to a US dollar, and then you can transact that on like a Cardano DEX with minimal fees. I think that could be a really nice way of getting fiat currencies through a stable coin onto a DEX. But I think if you enabled like a direct fiat payment, there would always invariably be some level of centralization there, which obviously if we're going to be like true to blockchain's roots, we want to avoid.
Yeah. Part of me wonders if not necessarily being 100% true to that is the best solution, because it might be the best product. I just think long term, and give me your thoughts here. I think long term, if you want everyone to be able to use this kind of stuff, they're probably not going to have one site to buy their fiat, a browser extension, and a DEX to trade their swaps. Most people aren't going to go through the hassle. Like, my aunt will never do that. So I wonder if, I don't know if anyone has plans of doing this, but I wonder, how that would work solution-wise, or if just crypto in general, crypto enthusiasts would shy away from, those more centralized features directly on a DEX like that. Because eventually, it's my thesis anyways, there'll be like a Robinhood of DEXs that are super easy to use. And it's a no-brainer, a couple buttons on an easy to use interface, but maybe that's just not crypto. I'm not sure.
No, for sure. And I think like I was in a panel the other day and we were speaking about this. I forget where it was now, and about the need for both. I think it was at the summit. Yeah, like the need for both centralized and decentralized routes into crypto. I mean, probably I'm a bit of like a hardcore crypto enthusiast, so I really don't mind using DEXs. But then like my mom, for instance, she holds some crypto, and she uses Coinbase. I don't think that she would be able to navigate MetaMask or some of these Web3 technologies. We definitely need to make it easier. But if we look at the evolution of DEXs, I mean, I remember using iDEX back in the day, which sort of seems like a dinosaur of DEXs now. And so it's like it had like a typical like your typical traditional exchange interface. So it looked just like you Binance's or like any other like full featured exchange, but it was essentially just the DEX. It was quite complicated to use. And then we had like the newer dexes like Uniswap, which came in with the super simple, you know, 1-for-1 swap capabilities. I mean, it did the same thing under the hood as IDEX did, but it just did it with a lot more style. So then maybe the next evolution of dexes could be bringing in that element that makes it even easier. But then there is always some level of centralization there when you do that thing. But I mean, if centralization wasn't desirable to some users, we wouldn't have the likes of Coinbase and Binance and all these big crypto exchanges. And if we want mass adoption, I think we're always going to have to admit that some users do want a centralized route into crypto. And it's a good stepping stone, you know. I mean, I bought my first crypto through a centralized exchange, and now I use DEXs almost exclusively. So, you know, we have to have these things in place to attract new users into cryptocurrency.
Yeah, I think that's definitely the case. Yeah, I mean, it's an exciting place to be in right now. You know, everything's changing so fast, and yeah, it's very cool. But yeah, I think that's all the questions that I have for today. I appreciate you taking the time. This is really insightful, and I'm looking forward to following Occam, and I'm looking forward to this demo launch. You said that's later on today.
Yeah. So I mean, I was just writing up the press release just before we jumped on this call. So it's going to go out to some journalists later today. Let's see if they want to write about it. I hope they do, because we have some pretty cool milestones in there, and then we're going to release it probably to our community tomorrow. So yeah, we're quite excited to release it. It's just a short video, but we've got all of like the blockchain addresses in there, so you can actually go and prove that we did 2 transactions simultaneously. So yeah, quite interesting.
That's very cool.
And thanks for having me on as well. It's been a really cool interview.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I appreciate you taking the time again. And yeah, I appreciate it. Thank you. You have a nice rest of your day.
Thanks very much. You too. Thanks, Max.
Bye.
Bye.